Where were you born?
in Fort Pierce, Florida.
And how long did you live there?
I lived there approximately 40 years.
And what was it like?
It was a small town, population probably about 10 to 12,000 at the time. Um, Pretty much agriculture, small country town.
And did your family have like any Sunday traditions or any traditions in general that you grew up with as a child or
All our family got together on Sundays and did a picnic or a barbecue or went swimming together.
and was it required for you to be there? Like did you get in trouble if you weren't
Yes,
there?
everybody attended. There was nothing else to do.
So what did you do to entertain yourself besides Sunday picnics?
We didn't have much to do growing up. There wasn't a lot to do in Fort Pierce. Maybe go to the beach.
So you just went to the beach like every day?
No, no. Go to the beach was maybe a couple times a month.
How many siblings did you have?
Two brothers and two sisters.
Were they older, younger?
I had one a year older, one a year younger, one 2 years younger, and one 8 years younger.
So would you say you hung out with them more than your friends?
We all hang out together, and our friends. Most of our friends were all the same friends.
What jobs did your parents have?
My father was a police officer, and then he went into the finance business, and then he opened up 3 lighting stores. And my mother was a homemaker.
Did they work often?
Yes.
So were you home alone a lot with your siblings?
When we were growing up, we would go to school and we'd come home and do all the chores before the parents got home.
And what kind of chores did you have?
We had to cook, we had to iron, we had to mop, we had to make beds, we had to wash clothes, we had to mow the yard. More
And
than most kids do today.
did your sisters mow the lawn, or was that something more you
No,
would do?
they did more house cleaning. My brother and I mowed the yard.
Did you have a job when you were in high school?
Yes, we most of the time we would either mow yards in the neighborhood, or I had a paper route where I delivered newspapers in the morning before school.
And who would pay you for that?
Whoever we mowed their yards, or the newspaper company would pay us.
And what was your pay?
We got, I think it was like 3 cents a paper delivered, and if we mowed a yard, it was $5.
What was your high school like?
I went to a Catholic high school in Fort Pierce, was 9th through 12th grade, and there was probably 300 kids in the school. We had a small sports programs. I played football and I played basketball, and that was about it.
What were the rules like at your Catholic school?
It was pretty strict. We had nuns and priests, and most of the teachers were older. It was very strict. We had a dress code that we had to go by.
What happened if you were to break the rules?
You got detention.
That's it? You wouldn't get suspended for anything?
No, because you didn't want to get suspended and your parents find out, because it would be bad.
Define bad.
You don't want to know what bad is.
Okay. You said you play sports. So what were your coaches like? Were they like the nuns at your school?
No,
or-
we had just lay people that were coaches, volunteered. The school didn't have a lot of money, so most of the outside sports was all volunteer work.
So it's just like parents who were involved at the school who volunteered?
Parents.
So they're a lot more lenient?
No, they were pretty tough. We had some guys that were old-time football players that, when you're playing football 45 years ago, it's a little different with the rules it is now today.
How so?
There was really no restrictions on what we could do at practice and so forth.
So what would you do at practice?
Well, we had difficult drills that we would do that they don't allow the kids to do today.
So after playing sports and going to school, what did you do for fun?
Well, we used to water ski when I was in high school, old enough to drive. We did a lot of water skiing. We'd go out in the boat fishing. I learned how to fly an airplane when I was 16, so I would fly around the state, fly to the Bahamas, and that was basically it.
So did you know how to fly before you learned how to drive?
I got my pilot's license a day after I got my driver's license.
So did you have an airplane before you?
My
had a
stepfather
car?
had an airplane, and I learned how to. I was started flying when I was 15, and then by the time I was 16, I had my pilot's license.
What would you say your homework was like?
We had homework every night in pretty much every class. We had 6 classes a day, so we most all the classes would give us homework.
So how long would you say you were doing homework when you came home?
2 hours.
And that's if you had homework for every class?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, they weren't always loaded down. Some was lighter homework than others.
Did you attend college?
No. When
So-
I graduated high school and went to work.
And where did you work?
I went to work in the citrus groves for my stepfather.
Would you say that there's more of a pressure for students today to attend college versus back then?
I think so, and I probably, if I had it all do over again, I would have gone to college.
Why?
Because I think to get a really good job in the education, you need that, in today's times especially.
So what did you get in trouble for in high school since the rules were really strict?
The main thing I got in trouble at school for was skipping school. We used to never go to school on Friday so we could work to have money to party on the weekends. So as long as football season was going on and we made it to school Friday for football, we got to play. After football season was over, it was anything goes. About the only thing that really got me in trouble for skipping school was with my mom. When she found out, the school called her, and she came over to my cousin's house and found me working on my car, and she took my car for 6 weeks. So needless to say, my car sat in the driveway, parked for 6 weeks. Other than that, it was just minor stuff, what most kids do.
And would you say it was hard to skip school? Like, did you have a lot of security at your school?
No, we just snuck out in between classes. I'd leave at any time I wanted to leave, but it was a small school, and as long as you had good grades and stuff, until they call your parents, you were okay.
But did you go out like a back door? Or you straight out just walked out like the front door of the school?
No, we just go out the back door where the gym was or something. Not a problem. It was easy. I think something else.
So tell me about your job in the citrus groves.
When I started out, I had to learn how to drive a tractor and do all the different positions in a grove. It was fun working outside because I enjoyed being around, in the groves and the woods. I used to do a lot of hunting, airboating, different things. So whenever I would get loose from working there, I would do that. One of the main things I enjoyed in the grove business was building and installing groves, clearing land and building a grove. And through my history of working in the groves, I probably planted over 10,000 acres of grove for us and for other people. So it was an accomplishment to see these trees be put in from the ground up and watch them grow up to be 10, 20 years old.
Would you say learning to drive a tractor was hard considering that you already knew how to fly an airplane?
No, it was very easy. It was like driving a car, but just in a little different, rougher conditions, and you're going a lot slower. So it was not difficult at all.
Did you have to take a lot of safety measures while working the groves?
No, back in the days when I was working in the groves in the middle and late 70s, there was no rules and regulations pertaining to that kind of stuff. You just got out there and made sure you were safe.
And how many hours would you say you worked there in a week?
We averaged probably 65 to 85 hours a week.
Would you say that that was a burden on you, or you genuinely enjoyed it?
No, you got used to it. You accepted it. That was part of the job or the business you were in. And farming was a 7-day-a-week job. So you had to be there and do what needed to be done. So it just was a routine that you adjusted to.
And what were your coworkers like? Were they all your age or your friends?
When I started, I was probably the youngest guy working there because I came right out of high school. Most of the men that I worked for were probably 35 to 60.
And did that alarm you in any way?
No, I was accepted pretty good, especially being the owner's son. But I managed to get along with everybody, so it was easy to adjust, and they enjoyed trying to show me what to do and how to do it. So it ended up being a good experience.
Would you say that if you had at least one person there your age, it would have been more of a fun thing to do, or you were okay with it?
No, because you didn't have time to converse and socialize. Most time everybody was pretty much working by themselves. They'd be on a tractor off somewhere, and you would eat lunch on your tractor or underneath a tree, and then you would get back to work. So it really didn't matter who was there.
Was it scary being alone in the groves?
No, it was no problem at all.
What did you enjoy about being alone out there, since you don't really want anyone
Well,
else?
you know, as long as you were doing your job, you didn't have anybody bothering you. You didn't have to listen to anything. You just started in the morning, got done in the evening, and went on. That's probably about it. Yeah.
What would you consider the most important inventions during your lifetime?
Probably the mobile phone, which wasn't a cell phone at the time. It was run through the radio. I can remember when I got the first one in my truck, and it was a radio based, and you had to call in to the office, and they would take and connect you directly into a phone system, so you could talk through your truck on a radio through the phone. And then Motorola came along with a so-called mobile phone, which was run off of a tower, based like a cell, but not quite. And it was in a box, in a bag. You had to carry it. It was pretty cumbersome, and it usually cost around $1 to $1.25 a minute to talk, so it was very expensive. But if you had one, it was like you were on top of the world, because you could talk to anybody you wanted wherever you were at.
So did you enjoy having that, or you wished
Yeah,
it
but
wasn't part of
we-
your lifetime?
We used it as a tool, mainly working in the groves, because there was no phones out there. So if we needed something, we could always call in with the phones. We weren't allowed to use it just for pleasure because of the expense.
And where would you say you traveled during high school? Because you said you had your pilot's license, so I'm sure you were able to go many places. So where did you like to go?
One of my first flights was to the Bahamas when I was 16 to Walker's. I flew solo to Walker's by myself, and then I've gone to many other islands over there, quite a few. I used to take people back and forth from my stepfather. I've flown to Georgia, I've flown to Alabama, all over Florida. It was a single engine plane, so we were limited how far we could go, but there's not many places in Florida that I didn't fly.
And how are the islands different during that time compared to Fort Pierce?
The islands were, it wasn't as populated, and it was, when I first started going over there, the Bahamas were still owned by the British government. So it was like 1977 or 78 when the Bahamas became independent. So it was a big changeover from then to now. And it was exciting to be able to go over there at that age and fish and dive.
How do you think times have changed since you were in high school versus now?
It's different classes, different schedules. I think the classes are harder now, more sophisticated. I think they're more challenging and set up to be able to get you into the college of your choice. We didn't have SAT and ACTs at the time I was going to school, and I think that's all made a difference. I might read that.
Do you think schools are harder now for a good reason, or do you think it should go back to the way it was?
No, I think it's for a good reason because times have changed. Jobs have changed. What people expect you to be able to know when you go to get hired in the different industries. More automation than we had when I was growing up.
Do you think that it's fair?
Yes, it's changes with the times. I went to school 40 years ago, and I don't think the kids want to learn and do the things we did 40 years ago.
And do you think technology has changed for better today?
Definitely so. We didn't have computers. I had to learn how to use a typewriter, and it wasn't even electric. It was a manual typewriter. So that's basically what we learned from, and the kids today don't even have a clue what a typewriter is. We didn't have cell phones. We didn't have computers. We weren't allowed laptops because they didn't exist. We had to do everything by hand. Everything was written out. We used to do all our math, long division. We had to do cursive writing, which is now no longer exist. So there was a lot of big changes now today than what you have going on.
Do you think it should go back to being less technology based, or do you think it should be more of a mix, or do you think they've gone too far?
No, I think you have to keep up with the technology or you won't be able to survive in the workplace because that's the way it's going. I disagree with the phones in the schools because I think it distracts from the kids learning instead of paying attention to what they should be doing.
How do you feel about the level of education needed now versus back then? Because you said that you didn't attend college, and now that's kind of needed. So how do you feel about that?
When I was going to college, or when I was going to high school, a lot of people went into vocational industries and they went into industries or worked for their families. That was kind of the commonplace thing growing up in the 60s and 70s and early 80s, was if your family had a business, you went to work for them when you graduated high school. There was kids that wanted to become attorneys or doctors or accountants that had to go to college. But if you didn't want to have a degree to that effect, you didn't need to go to college. So in today's times, an associate degree basically is a glorified high school degree. Most companies want you to at least have a bachelor's degree, and I think now even to teach you, you need a master's degree to be able to get into a lot of schools. So that has changed drastically since the time I went to school.
Do you think that it's fair that we have to go further than less than what you had to do?
I think I don't think it's a matter of fair or unfair. I think it's just if you don't do it, you're not going to get into a high-paying job or something that you're comfortable with. You're going to be left behind. There's so many kids graduating college today that the workforce has a huge pool to draw from. So if you don't try to meet the higher standards and get the higher degrees, you're not on the top of the list to be picked for the better jobs.
And how do you feel about current events happening in our world?
Basically, the world is in a mess. We've got to be able to start controlling and understanding how we can deal with the different societies, the different religions, the different whatever, and see if we can all come together and figure out, because we can't keep fighting. We can't keep having all these issues that we're having between civilizations from the east to the west. Hopefully, we'll be able to understand people more, and then they'll be able to figure this thing out to where we can all get along.
Do you think that it will get worse or better within these next?
It could get worse before it gets better. We have to get everybody to start to agree and to be able to understand each other. And if we don't, it could get worse. And it's strictly a matter about communicating and understanding, and it's going to take a lot to do that.
Do you think the present is better than 50 years ago?
It's a very hard subject to come up with a comparison because the times have changed so drastic. We didn't have cell phones. We didn't have the technology. We didn't know what was going on around the world like we do today in split seconds with Twitter and Facebook and whatever. We had old-time teletype fax machines and so forth, which was very antiquated compared to today's times. So the president's faced a lot of different challenges, but the challenges were not as immediate or as drastic as it is today's times. A lot more problems, a lot more issues.
Do you think that the awareness and how much the technology has advanced is better today, or do you think it should go back to old times necessarily?
Well, it's never going to be able to go back to old times. It is what it is. That's the way everything has evolved from the caveman up to now. And it's going to continue to evolve. I mean, artificial intelligence is stepping in. Robots, everything's computerized, everything's mechanized. We'll never go backwards. It'll just continue to go forward probably at a more rapid pace than it ever has, because technology is advancing daily.
If you could change it, would you want to?
It probably would be a lot less issues in the world. The terror wouldn't be as bad. The violence wasn't as bad. I mean, it was a very much slower paced life. Personally, I enjoyed that period, but I was born in that period. The kids today wouldn't enjoy that period because they're used to moving at such a fast pace, eating out fast food restaurants, talking on their cell phones. We didn't have texting. We couldn't send pictures over our phones, all that kind of stuff. So, I mean, I was happy in them 40 years, 50 years ago in those times, but I don't think the kids today would be happy.
Do you think that's a good thing or a bad thing? What is the difference on how kids act now versus how they acted back then?
I think most the kids today are very disrespectful of their parents and adults compared to when we were growing up, because if we were disrespected, we either got a hand across the face or a belt across the butt, and we would get put on restriction, this, that, and the other. And the kids, they just don't care anymore.
Why do you think that they don't really care anymore?
Well, I think parents have gotten so lax through the years that they just let the kids go. It's easier for them just to let them do what they want to do than discipline them.
And what are some other ways that you think the parents discipline their child back then versus now? You said slap across the face or slap on the butt. So what else do you think there is that's different from now?
When we were put on restriction, it was for weeks or months. Today, a restriction might last. We take the phone away for an hour or 2 hours. It wasn't even in the same ballpark is what we used to go through. I don't believe the kids understand the severity of what they do now because they feel like they're going to get whatever they got right back.
And how did you get punished when you were a child?
We got punished in many ways. Like I say, we'd either, if we were talking back, we could get slapped in the face, or we'd be sent to our room with no dinner, or we could get the belt. One of the three. It depended on the severity of what we did, or your car taken away. I mean, it was all kinds of different ways, but it was a lot more severe than today.
Do you remember what's the longest time you've got punished for?
If I made a C on my report card, I was restricted to my room for 9 weeks until the next reporting grades came out. And if it wasn't a C, then I'd stay in my room for the next 9 weeks after school. Come out only for dinner, go back into the room, have to study and do homework, and go to bed. No TV, nothing, which at that time TV was a big thing. That's all we had.
Were you still allowed to work after school when you were punished?
We had to do our chores and work, and that was it. We weren't allowed to play with our friends. We weren't allowed to go anywhere. It was strictly for work. Do whatever chores we had to do, and then back to our bedroom, and then come out just strictly to eat dinner and back to the bedroom.
Do you think that this was an effective punishment versus what parents do today?
Definitely so. It got your attention. If you ever had to sit in your bedroom for 9 weeks and not talk to your friends or go out and play softball or baseball with everybody else in the neighborhood, I think you made sure you didn't do it the next time.
Do you think that that could cause some other issues, though, such as depression? I mean, sitting in your room for 9 weeks is a long time.
Not necessarily. I don't think, I turned out that bad. I'm not depressed. I didn't pull my hair out. I didn't chew my nails off. I didn't tear the bedroom up because I knew I'd be in there for 18 weeks. I think the discipline most of the time was asked for. Usually we never got disciplined unless we did something we deserved.
What is your stance on social media?
I'm thoroughly against social media. I don't have any social media on my phone.
So you think it's more of a hindrance than a benefit?
I think people get caught up in it and they lose track of what's really going on, and there is other things to do in the world or in where you live than be stuck to your phone. I think people get obsessed with it. I think the bullying has come into play. I think I don't know why you have to let everybody in the world know what you're doing when you're going to the bathroom and whatever. And I think that's what's happened. People, there's no privacy in your lives anymore. And I think that's bad because I think you should have that.
Do you think that social media benefits us in any sort of way?
It's hard for me to say because I'm against it, and I don't like. I'm just not interested in it. So that's kind of a tough question for me to answer.
Do you think that people rely more on their phones rather than looking at a newspaper? Maybe it could benefit them in that sort of way. Do you believe in that, or you think it's better to look at your?
No, you can get the news off the phone better than you can the newspaper because the newspaper's usually behind a day. I don't object to that. I just object to the fact that nobody actually calls anybody and has a conversation anymore or talks. It's all about texting, Instagram, sending something over the line. There's no more dialogue. I think people are scared to talk to each other. I think people are going to be afraid to have conversation. I think people are going to be afraid when the kids grow up to be able to go into a meeting with 20 people and sit around a table and have a discussion. I think they're going to have to sit there and figure out how they can text the guy across the table.
Since you said earlier that technology is evolving so much, how do you feel that social media will evolve specifically?
I think it's going to control the lives of the majority of the generation coming up behind me. I don't think that they're going to know how to have fun. I think if they had to turn their phone off for a day, they'd probably have a heart attack or go into depression or want to shoot themselves. And I think it's bad.
You said that social media can cause issues, but do you think that can prevent any issues?
No, I don't think so. I don't see the good of it, it compared to the bad. And that's just my opinion.
Is there any type of social media that you think is good, such as like maybe Facebook versus Twitter or
The only good social media is the one that's turned off.